Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is the series where we take privacy-enhancing technologies out of the abstract and show how they're actually being used in the real world. Welcome to Pets in Practice. Many of you have probably heard the term pets a lot lately, but for many teams, it still isn't obvious exactly what pets do or how they fit in day-to-day business. The truth is that they're actually all around us, and without knowing it, you're probably using them every day when you browse online, use your phone, and engage in various services. Or if you're a customer of today's guests, Olivier Richaud from Symphony and Rene Kolga from Google. Companies like Symphony are showing just how approachable these technologies are, letting consumers and businesses analyze data without moving it, collaborate in ways they never thought they could, and securely and privately leverage AI. And Google, of course, is supporting this by providing the enabling infrastructure and making it secure and trusted. In this series, we're breaking it down. We'll look at what's pushing pets into mainstream adoption, the rise of secure AI, the pressure to get more value from data under strict regulations, and an ecosystem that's mature enough to make pets straightforward to roll out. And we'll hear from people who are using them in production, what's worked, what hasn't, and what's possible. If you're looking for better, faster, safer ways to collaborate and innovate with sensitive data, you're exactly in the right place. So today, we're diving into a company that's become a key technology capability enabler for leading financial service providers around the world, Symphony. They enable your banks, your wealth advisors, and other financial services experts you work with to communicate with each other quickly, securely, and compliantly. But you might not know exactly how they're enabling privacy and secure AI behind the scenes. So with that, I'm thrilled to welcome Rene, a product manager from Google Cloud's confidential computing team, and Olivier, the vice president of platforms and SRE at Symphony, who's leading much of the privacy technology and secure AI work. I'm excited to learn about how Olivier and his team are using pets to drive new uses of data. So let's jump in. Olivier, when people think about Symphony, they think about messaging and communications and not necessarily privacy-enhancing technologies. Can you share what you and your team do and why this work is strategically important to the company and your clients?
I would say at the core of Symphony is security and privacy. The data that we manage on behalf of our customers are their data, and we can't access their data. So for the maximum level of security and data privacy, we used to have on-prem components that are in charge of managing the access to the keys, ensuring the encryption of the data, so that Symphony in no case can access the data or be asked to deliver decrypted data. The data belongs to the customers. So with the advent of confidential computing, I would say 5 years ago, we saw the first attempts, and it was very technical, and progressively we saw the evolution by addressing not only the in-memory, in-use case, but also the workload legitimacy. I would say, is it a workload that you can identify? And the access to private resources, which are key for encryption or decryption or securing the data. So these are the discussions that we have at Symphony, so that we provide in cloud the same level of security, the same level of controls as on-prem, because on-prem we assume the controls are managed by our customers. So this is the discussion we're having with confidential computing, and obviously AI becomes the second target, I would say, because to perform data analysis or data workloads based on AI agents or whatever technology, you need to decrypt the data. So you need to ensure that when it's decrypted, it's safe and no one can access the data in clear. So these are the discussions we're having.
Very interesting. So the core challenges that I understand from you is basically how do you provide a level of privacy and security on the cloud instead of on-prem? How do you then enable different types of AI, like agentic AI, on that data at the high level of security. That's basically the core challenge that you're using privacy
Exactly.
technologies for.
It's absolutely not different from what our customers are doing with their agents, which are not AI agents, but they are accessing the data stored into Symphony and their own downstream and upstream systems. They tend to
sorry.
operate this workload on-prem, and AI is not changing that. We're going to use the AI to implement the workloads, but the same is applicable. How do you make that confidential?
So without getting too technical, what does that actually translate to in terms of customer value? What's the real return on investment of using privacy technologies, like how you're implementing them?
Clearly, there's a shift and there's a will to transfer on-prem workloads in cloud. That's the first thing. That's why cost avoidance, scalability, and access to latest technologies and solutions. It's proven that all the CSPs, and I'm not talking of anyone specific, but all cloud service providers offer at a very fast pace new technologies and make them production ready to customers. So we're seeing the same with the transfer of on-prem workloads to the cloud. It's on the customer side, it's the benefit of not managing any infrastructure without decreasing the security posture. And on our side, it's about not managing any components deployed on-prem so that we don't have to synchronize with customers for new releases, patches. We can provide as a SaaS provider, which is our mission in the financial industry. We can deliver new technologies, new solutions at the same level of security and avoid any cost to the customers. So that's the mission. So access to new technologies, faster pace of innovation, and lower cost. These are the three pillars.
Interesting. And Rene, I saw you just came off of mute. I don't know if you wanted to add anything there.
No, I just recently heard an interesting stat that between 60 to 80% of workloads are still on-prem or in private clouds, which is a little bit surprising, obviously coming from working at a cloud company. We think everyone is already modernized and running everything in public clouds or hybrid clouds, but actually the reality is not that. And what Olivier from Symphony just highlighted, that was kind of one of the main things for them to help transition on-prem workloads to the cloud.
That's really interesting. And with sort of the key value here of moving to the cloud is being able to take advantage of what that means in terms of cost avoidance and technology. Olivier, I'm wondering, do your customers, do your end users realize they're benefiting from privacy enhancing technologies in order to get them comfortable to make that move? And if so, how are you communicating what this is to them? Because these are usually pretty challenging technologies to explain how they work. How would you use data while securing it, while keeping it private? So can you share a little bit about that as well?
I will differentiate the initial speech, technical speech, and technology speech. And immediately they understand that if the technology is production grade and ready, which is the case today, they immediately see the benefits. Why? Because they want to invest not in the infrastructure, they want to invest in the business value they get immediately. That's the biggest difference. And it's why I'm separating and the initial discussion, which is we do have a solution that brings the same level of controls in cloud, and you can immediately get the benefits. It's not progressive, it's immediate. It's in one single budget cycle, you can save money. And it's not only saving money, saving resources, people, infrastructure, whatever. The second discussion, which is the longest discussion, is to prove the controls we have in cloud are identical or better than on-prem. The idea that it's better in cloud today than on-prem. Because the difference in cloud is that we prove everything we state. And whereas on-prem, it's based on the assumption that the security is optimal.
Interesting. So actually, you're saying that it's easier to have this discussion because using trusted execution environments or confidential compute, you can prove it. While if you're working on-prem, there's a degree of trust, let's say that's non-technical trust that's needed. Is that a fair?
I would say, yeah, I would say it's a bit different. It's not only the technology, the hardware technology, which is about the trusted execution environment. It's everything that came in addition in terms of workload identification, authorization, access to control, and secure resources. And that's the whole package, which is the value, and where you can say, if I run a sensitive workload in cloud, I can prove that it's well identified, it's what we say, and we can prove it is exactly that, and that we can prove that it runs on the trusted execution environment, and it accesses only authorized resources and critical resources. This is the whole package. And from I would say, the underlying infrastructure and hardware up to the application layer. And that's the real value. And to me, it has yet to be demonstrated that we achieve the same level of security and control over an on-prem infrastructure.
That's really interesting. And what you just said to me really shows the inflection point in the market and the understanding of privacy technologies, because you're saying it's actually easier to prove trust and security and attest to what's happening using these than in the on-prem way, which Rene, you said is what, 80% of usage today? So that's, to me, that's a really important point to bring up. And on that, Rene, you are the, let's say, infrastructure and the secure infrastructure provider for this that's somehow today now easier to explain than on-prem. So how are you as Google enabling Symphony and other organizations to understand what's possible with privacy technologies and how to utilize them?
Yeah, on specifically to Symphony's example, we really had a great collaboration with Olivier and his team there at Symphony over a number of years, actually. And they're a great customer in the sense that they had a great vision and a very clear need, right? How to safely and securely move those financial services customers with top level of privacy and security guarantees and demands. So those are probably some of the most sophisticated and security oriented customers, right? And so we worked very closely with Symphony across different levels, from executive product as well as a very technical level. And although we believe that PATs like TEs are starting to gain quite broad adoption and reaching the maturity level, not every security team, not every customer has had an opportunity to work with these technologies yet and understand them. So it does take some time to go over those threat models and go over those security guarantees to ensure that customers understand those properties. I think we even had a case where one of our technical leads had to join a customer call with Symphony to provide that security overview at a very deep and detailed level. So anyway, I think even though the PATs technologies like confidential computing, like confidential space that we at Google offer, we believe they're quite easy to use and quite easy to adopt. But it still takes some effort to explain the technology and integrate it properly where it makes sense. And of course, PATs is just part of the solution, right? Like Symphony, there are many other components around key management. And so it's about the full package, not just about TEs or PATs.
What I'm hearing is that it was harder to convince Olivier than it is for Olivier to convince his customers.
Yeah, because it's what I said, you start under the assumption the security is maximal on-prem. Mm-hmm. So you have to prove everything for the first time. And I would draw the parallel with what was at the time encryption at rest and encryption in flight. Look, 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, you were asked to prove that the security of encrypted data on disk was a reality. Today, would you question that? Absolutely not. The second was valid with encryption in flight on the network. I truly believe that I don't have a crystal ball, but it's going to be the reality. And I've many times mentioned that to Rene. It's going to be the norm. It has to be. It's not going to be a specific workload. The technology here is going to be widely available to the masses, and nobody will question that in a few years. Maybe, I don't know what sort of horizon we're discussing, but it's going to be the norm and the standard.
I completely agree. And actually, this goes into something, Rene, that you and I often discuss, which is how open standards fit in to engendering this sort of trust and this sort of future that Olivier is laying out. So could you speak a little bit to how Google think through standards related to security and privacy and these types of technologies?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. Google has always been a big believer in open source and open standards, right? We believe in open architecture as well, rather than lock in. And of course, while I would prefer everybody to be using Google Cloud, the reality is that most customers leverage multiple clouds and maybe even on-prem, as we just discussed, by using open standards. For example, OIDC for our attestation token, we can interoperate with other clouds as well as on-prem environments. And I think that is super important, right? Think of that iconic use case for fraud detection across multiple banks, right? One bank will be on Google Cloud, another bank on Azure, somebody on AWS, somebody on-prem, and the mix of everything, if you're talking about potentially dozens of banks. So they still need a place to interoperate and bring all of their data together to do anti-money laundering or fraud detection and things like that. Yeah, just highlights the importance of open standards.
I think it'll get more important as we go into the world of AI as well, which a lot of people view as less explainable. And so you even need a stronger foundation of openness. I'm curious, Rene, and then Olivier, to get your thoughts. How do pets fit into the world of AI in general, and then maybe agentic AI in specific?
That's a billion-dollar question, Ron. And overall, we believe that confidential computing is kind of one of the great enablers for AI, whether it is to protect your training data for that AI model or the model itself, or to ensure the integrity of that data or that model, right? And whether to enable one party to use another party's proprietary model, or to guarantee that the customer's prompts and model responses are protected. All of these cases can leverage or should leverage pets, whether it's TEs or some other pets as well. Similarly, with the MCP servers and AI agents, for example, how do you know that you're talking to the right one, right? So here, I think you can benefit from, again, that integrity guarantee through remote attestation. But I think it's still certainly early days. But yes, Olivia, what do you think?
I'd say there are three cases in terms of security and data privacy that you can achieve with the model. Either you run it on-prem, and we're back to the future, I would say. And I don't think we're going to achieve economy of scale and flexibility and agility, because it's not about, it's about doing your own job. What matters to you? Are you there to maintain an AI infrastructure, and can you maintain it at a very fast pace over the long run? The second thing is how, if you move that to the cloud, is that how do you guarantee that the data you submit and the result has been protected during the execution? So we're back to the same discussion. One is going to be the time of AI workload in cloud running on confidential compute. And it's very valid not only for AI. We see AI taking advantage of databases to ground results. And it's going to be the same. Why do you need to release the security controls you've established? So in the end, progressively, if you want to have agility, you need to consume AI and run a workload which are identified, legit, without compromising the security of your data. I would say it's a very big highway for AI on confidential compute. That's really written on the walls, I would say.
And do you see, at least with sort of the use cases that you're thinking through, and you mentioned agentic AI earlier, do you see that you're also able to deploy AI against new data sets or build better models as a result of access to new data and given the privacy and security that you offer as a result of that? Or is it still mostly, hey, let's just do the same thing on the cloud today so that we can take advantage of the cost savings and infrastructure, and then we'll think through the new stuff later? Like, where are you on your journey with that?
I would say it's important today it's not only MCP servers client, we can debate whether Symphony is upstream or downstream, but it's about the ecosystem that's going to be built. I liked what Rene said about being interoperable. That's what matters. And being interoperable, it's not only connecting each other, it's about knowing each other. It's like in the financial industry, KYC. You know your customer. So it's know your workload, MCP agents, and so that we can create the first wave, which is about human using agents, our agents, the agents developed by our customers, interconnected with our agents in the second wave. So it's going to be agent to agent communication, or with human in the loop at some stages, because it matters in terms of compliance in our industry, or when you want to guarantee 100% result. But that's pet technologies are immediately at the center because they will create the trust between the parties.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, from what it's worth, where we sit, it's the same sort of trust between parties story, because where we focus is always across organizations. And so that certainly resonates. Since we're on the topic of AI and future looking, Rene, where do you see pets evolving over the next few years? And sort of the premise of our discussion is pets are all around us and we don't even know. Which use cases do you think will quietly become mainstream?
Yeah, I like to see what's happening in the consumer space. For example, if you look at something like Apple PCC or Pixel Private AI Compute, it's becoming clear that pets, whether those are TEs or differential privacy or federated learning, federated analytics, are becoming baked in standards, especially for these newer Gen AI use cases. Again, at a minimum in the B2C space. And I'm really hopeful that the B2B industry will catch up soon as well. Regulators are also starting to make progress here as well, from the EU AI Act to the guidance from various industry bodies like CSA or CIS. They all start talking about protection for data in use, in addition to at rest and in transit, of course. Confidential GPUs, again, when we talk about AI, is another very interesting area we are quite excited about. Yeah, what do you think, Ron, and what are you seeing?
I definitely agree with you around consumer. I do think that business to business, and actually even more so business to government, is much further along than people think. Governments by default just have a lot of sensitive data and they have concerns around human rights and national security and everything in between. And so that's actually an area where we're seeing a lot of interest. And then related to generative AI in specific, obviously we're doing a lot around secure inference, right? So people usually think about training as a big challenge, but it's expensive, but it's rare. Inference is happening billions of times a day. I'm sure Gemini is used billions and billions of times a day, right? And even then, we still see organizations self-censoring the questions that they're asking. And I think that the real value will be unlocked once you can get over that hump. Olivier, where do you sit on this question, particularly, let's say, for financial services or around messaging and communications?
So I take your point. The real point today is about inferencing. It's 99%. We do inferencing. We are not there to train the models, especially large models. We can select models which are better, which are fitting our needs, but it's where it stops. And I would say the vast, overwhelming majority of users will be in this situation. The discussion again is with pet is how, when you submit for inferencing, you are sure that you're not disclosing any private data. And that's the discussion. And we had the discussion with Rene about confidential GPUs. Obviously, this is the way to go, and it's going to be most probably the standard again in the next decade. There's no reason that we disclose data because it's an AI workload. It's just a service. We have to think about that. It's a service that we consume when we go to maps, for example. Do we want to disclose anything about ourselves? No, we want a service which is give me the indications where I am. That's it. And it's not different because it's AI. AI is a service that is consumed, and inferencing, it's typically a service that you pay as you go.
Makes perfect sense. Yeah, and one of our other webinars in this series actually is talking about Google Maps and the privacy around that. So it's a spot-on example that you gave. So I want to close out with the path that both of you have taken and where you see things going. For organizations that are looking for innovation or growth or cost efficiencies, how can pets help them? And what advice would you offer for organizations that are starting on this path?
If I may, if you start using pets and you prove that your use is valid and legit, you can unlock many use cases because it's not only about, we discussed AI at length, but it's how do you combine data set? How do you avoid exposing data? In highly regulated industries, financial sector, health, any highly regulated environment, you need to prove that you take security at the center. So pets are just there to help you with that. So to me, it will unlock many use cases where you can combine or access on behalf of customers to their data without compromising or accessing the data that you shouldn't see. And that's it's foundational, I would say.
Rene, I assume you agree, so I won't ask if you disagree, but what would you like to add?
No, plus one. I think it's all about the business unlock, right? It can be security for the sake of security or pets for the sake of pets, right? As Olivier mentioned, does it unlock new use case or unlock value from some data that you can't touch today, or unlock some growth opportunities, or enables you to collaborate with your competitors, or to increase some collaboration with your existing partners. So that's number one. It can also be trust unlock, right? What if you could prove to your end customers that even though you offer a service for them, you can never see, or your employees can never see their data? Frankly, longer term future, I believe all SaaS solutions should run inside of TEs, for example, because then you harden your infrastructure from well-meaning insiders, from accidental insiders, malicious insiders, and any attackers on your network. So why wouldn't you do that and deliver that or package that as this trust unlock? Because as we know, it's very easy to lose trust, and it's very hard to regain that trust from your end customers.
And I would say there's an increasing pressure to improve the security posture. And by introducing pet technologies, you completely enter a zero trust environment. It's not because you have special privileges, you can see data you shouldn't. No, you can't. Simply, you can't. The data, it's not the data you process on behalf of the customer. And for this, you have access to the data. You just process the data, remains in control and belongs to the customer. So that's what matters in terms of privacy and security posture, because as a company, you reduce your attack surface. Because in the end, okay, I don't say it's the nominal scenario, but should you have a breach? And so what? Data is encrypted, in use, at rest, on the wire. What else? How can you access the data? So you increase progressively your security posture. So just for the sake of that, I would say it's going to become a mandate.
I love that we've made really visionary statements here, and I think that is a perfect final word to close out. To summarize our discussions, I think that we all agree that this technology is becoming the norm, not a specialist capability. And when you change your mindset to put security of the center at what you do, that's what enables that business unlock that Rene was talking about around new use cases and business growth. And Olivier, what it seems like you're experiencing at Symphony today, which is just a better way of doing business at lower costs, at higher security, and more flexibility. So pets are all about the business unlock is what I'd leave everyone with. And with that, Rene and Olivier, thank you very much for your time and your insights. I really enjoyed this discussion, and have a great rest of the day, and to the audience as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.